Hello, good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to have a very special guest who has some nuggets to share with us. For those who don't know who I am, my name is James Weeks. I'm the author of the book Meditations Across the King's River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. I'm also the producer of the upcoming documentary film Across the King's River. To learn more about me, visit acrossthekingsriver.com. I'm so happy you're on my page. And I also provide strategies for emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, and financial wellness. Today, I'm honored. I have a very special guest, special friend of mine, a scholar, very interesting man, Christopher Brown, also known as Baba Shangodare. Um, Shangadar is very special. He has a degree in mathematics, also has a degree in computer science. He's also a numerologist and astrologer. He's a serious student of plant medicine. He's also an Ifa priest and diviner, as well as a lifelong seeker of knowledge and wisdom of other cultures, African cultures, but other cultures. So, welcome, Shangadara. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, one of the things that fascinates me about you, I mean, there are many things that fascinates me. Is one, your background in mathematics, and your interest in spirituality, and your love of numbers. Could you tell us about your childhood? From what you've told me before, you've always been fascinated by numbers at an early age. Oh, also, I have to say this. So Christopher also used to work for NASA, the United Space Alliance, which I think his job at that time was working on the arm of the space shuttle. Is that correct? Okay.
And the display panels.
Okay, good, good, good. So tell us about this lifelong quest for numbers that began at an early age.
Well, I think I must have been maybe probably about 5 years old, and I had two older siblings at the time that was living in the same household with me, so I was actually motivated many times by their experiences in school. My sister um, was, I think she was maybe a freshman in high school at the time, and she was taking algebra. And I remember one day I asked her, I wanted to learn how to do it, and basically she was like, you know, basically saying, you don't have the reference points yet, or you're not capable of solving these type of problems or equations. So about that time, my father took me under his wings and started teaching me multiplication tables. I was about 5 years old. And from there, it skyrocketed. So by the time I got to the first grade, second grade, I knew I do my multiplication tables. Um, and it didn't just stop at numbers. I mean, I knew all the presidents in order from at the time 1 to 38. At the time, I think Jimmy Carter was in, no, 1 to 39. I'm sorry. Jimmy Carter was in office at the time. So um, I just love learning, and numbers were at the core of all of
Wow.
that.
Um, so then tell us, so then how did you end up at NASA, United Space Alliance, and then how did you end up getting interested in spirituality?
Well, I graduated university in 1994, and I started off by my first real job per se was teaching school. So I taught school for a year, and I decided to go back and finish up my computer science degree. And when I graduated, I I didn't have a job, and so I ended up traveling to Atlanta for a very brief time, for some months, and that didn't work out. Moved back to Houston, where I attended university. I attended Texas Southern University in Houston, and I went back to the head of the department of the physics and computer science department where I attended, and she told me that NASA and all these different subcontractors were hiring, and so um, I went back to the placement office, discovered different jobs that was on the board, and the rest is history. And I got hired at Lockheed Martin, which, of course, is one of the largest defense contractors in the U.S. in the world, and who basically builds planes and everything else. And so the software division that I was hired to be a part of was actually in part of Lockheed Martin. And so my first job outside of teaching was with Lockheed Martin, and they held major contracts with NASA at the time, and that's how I got my foot in the door.
So could you tell us then how you got interested in African spirituality and spirituality in general, and why do you think spirituality is so fundamentally important for all of us?
Well, I grew up in a small town in East Texas where everywhere, every school that I attended was pretty much mixed with black, white. At the time, it wasn't many Latinos. Um, they were here, but it wasn't like it is now. And so when I went off to college, it was um, it was kind of shocking for me. And what I mean by that is, yes, I grew up in a black neighborhood. Yes, I attended black church. But when I went off to college, I had never seen and been around that many black people in an academic setting. So that was new for me, which of course I enjoyed it. And so at that time, I a lot of my friends were from New York, Chicago, and their experiences, of course, growing up in inner cities in the United States, they were introduced to different things that maybe I may have heard of, or I wasn't really indoctrinated in. And so when I attended university, it's the first time that I really got caught up. I don't say caught up, but actually was introduced into the Black Power movement. Um, this is the time I started getting introduced into truly Pan Africanism. I was a study of Black history. Prior to that, my father was a historian, so I was well up on history, Black history, even aspects of African history that most people probably in 1988 or 89 was not up on top of. But when I attended Texas Southern University, it was more introduction into I don't want to say Black radicalism, but it was more it was going deeper into certain philosophies. So that was my intro into uh, I guess you could say black, not just Black history, but of course, when you start talking about African history, you start talking about African spirituality. And so I began that quest. And as I continued down that journey, I came in contact with ancient Kemet, which, of course, I lived in Egypt for 8 years. So something that I truly love, but I also came in contact with philosophical perspectives that are not considered mainstream. And I just got deeper and deeper and deeper. Um, and I was always an individual. I was raised to look at things objectively. I was raised to look at things not from uh, I guess, a biased perspective. I've always prided myself looking at things from a universal perspective. So when I started studying spirituality, I began not just studying African spirituality, but I started studying Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, uh, things, esoteric wisdom. And so I start seeing the connection between African history, African spirituality, and other spiritual systems throughout the world. And as I continued to move down that track, I was I was able to see the connection, the oneness of all of them, and it just got me on that quest of continuing to go deeper with that. Hopefully, I answered your question.
Yes, it does, and thank you everyone for who's joining us so far. Baba Irwin, thank you for joining us. So let me ask
Aklato.
you this. So when I first sent out this announcement, I talked about sacred numbers, divine numbers. Could you tell us what numbers have to do with our lives and how numbers can give us insight into our lives? Because most people are not aware that numbers and things like numerology can help us. Can you explain how these things can help us?
What one of the most famous quotes is is uh, is a Saint Augustine quote. Saint Augustine, known as one of the church fathers back in the fourth century, third and fourth century. He said that numbers are a representation of God, and so numbers are signs and symbols that basically can give you insight of energy of a particular thing. But if it's the energy of your human experience over a particular time period, or even aspects of your own character, it sounds crazy, but it works. You have people, that um, come to me and they tell me their birthday, and then they were like, "Dang, that's right on point," because it's a sophisticated but a very simple system. If you ask me, well, how does it work? All I can tell you is that it does work. And numerology is not just a quote unquote Western thing. You have different systems throughout the world, what if it's African, Asian, whatever, that uses a form of numerology. If you're born on a certain day, you carry a certain energy. If you are born, say you're born on the 14th of a month, well, you there's an energy that comes with that 14, which is associated with someone who loves freedom, someone that does not like to be restricted, somebody that probably loves moving, loves to travel, but also has to be very careful of addictive behavior in certain areas in their life. So it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And there are certain numbers that gives us an indication of what kind of energy you uh, played out in a previous incarnation, what type of karmic debt that you created from a previous life, and what you had to do in this life to try to burn that particular karma out. So it's a very sophisticated but simple system.
All right. So I have a birthday that I would like you to look at from a friend who sent it in to me. So I'm wondering if you could just break down her number. So it's January 14, 1980. Just January 14, 1980. Just looking
Okay.
at these numbers and what you know of numbers, what type of message would you give to her around purpose, life path, that type of thing?
Well, January 14th, 1980. First of all, each one of those numbers is based upon a subcategory of or subcycle of a much larger cycle. The life path number, which consists of the day you're born, the month you're born, and the year you're born, is known as, again, a life path cycle. It's the longest cycle and the most important cycle in someone's numerology makeup. It begins at birth and it ends at death. You also have the month, the day, and the year. The month is based upon formative years. The day is based upon productive years, and the year is based upon harvest. It's a harvest cycle. So you have to take in account when you calculate this, those three subcycles or those three categories, because each one of them have their own integrity. And so someone born on the 14th of January 1980, the month they're born is January. That's a 1. The day they're born is the 14th. 1 plus 4 is 5. So you have 1, you have and you have a 5. So that's 1 plus 5. The year she's born is 1980. 1 plus 9 is 10. 10 plus 8 is 18. Plus 0 is still 18. 1 plus 8 is 9. So you have plus 1 plus 5, right? Which is 6, plus 9, which is 15. And 1 plus 5 is 6. This individual's life path is a 6. The secondary number, which is the energies that make up the 6, is 1 and 5, which means she would exemplify characteristics of a 1, characteristics of a 5, but whose essence is 6. This is very important because some people just add the numbers across. When you just add the numbers across, example, if you just say January 14, 1980, use 1 plus 14 is 15, and then you add the numbers from 1980, you may get 33. Well, 3 plus 3 is 6. You get the end result, but you don't get the journey. The journey is the most important thing. And so I may understand that this person is one who's a nurturer, one who is a caregiver. People gravitate toward them with their issues. They're here to bring balance and harmony into the community. But that secondary number is very important, because when you have a 15-6, you're going to also exemplify characteristics of the 5, which has its own signature, characteristics of the 1, which has its own signature. And so it will play out slightly different than someone who's a 33-6. Someone who's a 33 is someone that is extremely open. And when I mean extremely open, many times people with a 33 life path don't live up to their potential. It's a very high vibrational number. So many people want to be 33s because it's significant. But many times their number really is not a 33. When I say 33, you have 11s, 22s, 33s, 44s. These numbers are known as master numbers. And so it's very difficult to master a 33. So it's even more difficult when you're not really a 33. So you're thinking you're a 33, and you put all this pressure on you. You're supposed to be a 33 when in actuality you're not a 33 at all.
So in this case, with this particular number, what does she have to watch out for, or how do you feel her life is playing out right now?
Well, as I said before, this individual is one who is always, people are always coming to them with their issues. And the reason I say that, because she has a life path 6. The number 6 is about nurturing. The number 6 is about taking care of the family. The number 6 is about community. It's about harmony and balance. So that's number 1. So she would always need to set boundaries so she can actually eliminate some of the negative energy that comes to her from other people because of their issues. If she needs to do some more meditation, more spiritual baths, go hug a tree, something that she needs to do to release other people's negative energy, because she's always absorbing their energy, because she's a teacher, she's a healer. That's number 1. Number 2, she's born on the 14th. That's a karmic debt number. This number, this 14-5, is a number that speaks about in previous life that she may have, because of her drive for freedom of expression, she may have caused other people to suffer based upon her extending so much of her choice of having certain freedom of expression. And so in this life, she has a debt that could bring forth certain addictions. There are certain addictive behaviors that she may have that could be with food, it could be alcoholism, drugs, anything that can bring addiction. It doesn't have to be a substance. Also, she'd have to be careful of diabetes, um, alcoholism. Any of these things could be not with her, but it be in her DNA, which is in her bloodline, which her ancestors or her parents or her grandparents would probably be someone that dealt with diabetes or any other disease that deals with that. It also is a number that, if you're not careful, can bring about Alzheimer's or dementia, because we've learned through later studies that dementia, Alzheimer's, or we call it the third diabetes. And they've made a connection between diabetes and dementia. And then this particular number also deals with, it's very connected with like consciousness or the 12th house in astrology, dealing with Olokun. So it could bring psychological and mental illness also. So you just have to be very careful with this number, because it is focusing on discipline. If you look at the 14, it's made up of a 1 and a 4. And that 1 and 4, which is a 5, can bring you can go to the extremities. But the remedy of this particular number is to focus on the 4. Have more structure in your life, have more discipline in your life, have more order in your life, because this is where you're going to truly be blessed to take advantage of the opportunities that will come to you. But if you don't, you would tend to go to the extremes, and then when those things come to you, you may not truly be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they come to
Okay, so we have some questions here. Alicia's asking, what numbers are you adding for the journey?
you. Are you talking about?
I'm not sure what she's asking. I'll ask her to rephrase that question.
I
So
think she's asking about the secondary numbers because I used the term the journey in my answer. The secondary numbers are the numbers, the last two numbers that are used that you add up to the single digit number. Case in point, the individual's birthday that you gave me, her secondary number was 15. So 1 + 5 is 6. So that means when I use the reference of the journey, she's 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 playing out the energies of the 1 and the 5. Okay, so she has characteristics of the 5 and the 1. Even though she is that 6, she is about balance, she is about harmony, she is about nurturing, she is about all of that, but she also exemplifies that 1 energy of being a leader, one who doesn't have a problem initiating things.
okay, we lost your video for some reason. I don't know why, but we'll continue since we can still hear you. Here you are. Okay, so I'm going to show you another question that someone asked, and I don't know the answer to this. So someone is asking, Kathy is asking, what about repeating numbers? Do you add them together like you do with a birthday? For example, I see 9/11 at times in my life repeatedly. I see it as a warning to ask for help at these times, but I would like to know what your thoughts are.
Exactly. I mean, signs and symbols are very powerful. And if your reference point of 9/11 is about emergency, then that's what it means for you when it comes to you. A lot of times it's based upon a cultural reference. Now, 9/11 may not mean anything to the person in the bush, but 9/11 means, there may be something that needs to be addressed in our particular culture. As far as repeating numbers, like 111, 222, 333, we talk about that that's a message coming from your spirit guides or from higher realms of consciousness. All numbers have meanings. And so when you start getting into like 111, 222, those are at least three numbers. They talk about the Trinity in all these different systems. So this is just a connection. This is your consciousness using numbers as a reference to get you the message. If you're dealing with 444, this could be speaking about this is a message to you that you may need to get your life in order as far as structure and some discipline. Why? Because the number 4 represents structure, order, and discipline. If you're dealing with 1111, people say this is where the truth is coming down. People are using that as a reference uh, um, when they talk about the different, like the Hall of Ma'at, dealing with the number 11 and 1111 and the balance of and the double truths. And so it's your reference points. And if you don't have a reference point and you see these numbers, then more than likely you're going to look them up, and then you're going to end up developing a reference point, and that is the message for you at the time. A lot of these things, a lot of these things are not just totally carved in stone. Now, there is a set standard in numerology what certain numbers mean. And so, based upon the collective consciousness, those what these numbers mean most of the time. But if you grew up in a culture where the number 4 represents something totally different than what it represents to us, then your reference point of that number may be totally different than mine.
So question. So one of the things that you talk about a lot as you work with people is understanding trauma. And you made the comment to me yesterday that, well, everyone has trauma, right? Some type of trauma that they're dealing with. What do you feel like blocks us from like seeing our traumas or working through like different types of trauma? As you work with people, you've been working with people for a long time. If I were to ask you, like, well, what's the main thing you find that's holding people back from living lives that are more fulfilling or abundant or just more on their terms? What would you say?
In general, I would say not having the ability to see ourselves. And what I mean by that is if we have been conditioned from birth to think a certain way, or if we have been conditioned to create a defense mechanism based upon an experience that we had as a child, and it has become normal for us. We don't even realize that we're actually walking with trauma. Numerology is a system that actually can help you see yourself when when you didn't have the ability to see yourself just based upon your experiences. We don't realize many times that when people come to us and they continually tell us the same thing over and over about ourselves, we sit back and get defensive and say and try to blame it on everybody else. But the common denominator is you. You're having that experience. The reason you're having those experiences is because your consciousness is creating an experience that's being projected from your inner being, called a human experience. And when you have these human experiences, it is a projection coming from your inner being that's a signature that's based upon traumas and triggers. So, case in point, if I'm always coming in contact with the same type of people and creating the same type of relationship that I continue to be not fulfilled and not happy, it's not the other people's fault. It's my fault. There's something within my blueprint consciousness that can continue to create these repetitive patterns. And so the, the one of the things that I say is the most difficult thing for human beings is to see themselves. But the key is the best way to see yourself is look at the people that you keep projecting. Are you projecting people that are peaceful? Are you projecting people that are angry? Are you projecting relationships that are healthy? If the answer is always negative, then that means the problem is not with the people that you attract. The problem is with you, because you wouldn't attract those people if it wasn't coming from inside of you. So with numerology, there are certain numbers that are considered karmic debt numbers. Automatically, it identifies certain traumas that you have coming out of the womb. But certain issues can be identified. Say, for instance, if you see someone who has an abundance of eights in their name. Well, the eight deals with power. The eight deals with control. The eight deals with all of those, expansion. But what if you have too many of them? That means you may have an issue with control. That's a problem. What if you have 16 sevens throughout your chart? Well, this is saying that you have problems with family and relationship and abandonment issues. And it speaks about that in a previous incarnation, you abandoned your family and caused the family members to grieve. So in this life, this is the reason why you don't feel like you have a place at home. You having family problems. You can't keep a girlfriend. It's because there's a wound in your heart that you have not healed from, because you don't even know that it's there. You just think it's normal. You're just thinking that you just blaming everybody else in your relationships and not understanding they are nothing but roles. They're fulfilling roles that you have written in your own contract. And until you identify where that hole is in your character, you're going to continue repeating that same thing. Why? Because your human experience is like watching a movie. The movie you're watching is on screen. That's your human experiences. But if you want your movie.
We lost him. 1 second, I'll see if we could bring him back. In the meantime, we're open to any questions. In the meantime, just feel free to send in some questions, and I'll have him answer them when he gets back online. We just lost him momentarily. Hopefully, he'll be back online. But I'm just going to keep the line open here for any questions as they come in. For those that don't know, I'll continue talking about how I met Baba Shangodari. Well, how I met him is we both had the same mentor in the Ifa spiritual tradition. His name was Dr. Afolabi Epega. And when Dr. Epega died, I think it was around 2005, Shangodari and another colleague of ours, Baba Femi, reached out to me. And reached out to me and wanted to get to know me, and that's when we started this our years of interacting. I think he's back on right now, but I don't see his audio. Are you with us, Shangodari?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. So we don't have
But
your video, but I want you to we lost him again. Um,
it mutes me.
okay, are you still there? Okay. All right.
I'm
So we
still
have
here.
a question with us. This person is asking, I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. She's asking the question. Um, she says that her current date of birth is December 15th, 1994. And she says she's initiated into our tradition, Shango Yemoja, and she's having a lot of family trauma, both from her mother and father. And I'm just wondering, just from her birth date, is there a message, or what insights can you share?
Well, her life path is a 5. It's a 14-5. So that lets me know that that's a karmic signature of the 5 energy. She's a person that loves freedom. She's a person that can get bored easily. She probably loves foreign cultures and loves to travel. And if she is not traveling, she needs to find the discipline and the planning to be able to travel. Um, as far as the family issues, I would probably have to look deeper into her chart, because right now we're just looking at the life path and I'm only looking at about 3, 4 different cycles. But by looking at the her first pinnacle, which is a 9, she does carry an Oya type of energy, just for the simple fact she's born December the 15th. And I say that because 15 is 1 plus 5 is 6. And the December is 12, which is 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 6 is 9. So this is saying that her formative years, the lesson that she was supposed to learn deals with the 9 energy, what if it's love, compassion, um, but she was going through a lot of different changes as a child. And the first question I would ask her is, how stable was her environment growing up? Was it a stable environment? Did it seem like she was always in transition?
Okay. Another question. So Daniela is asking us, can you talk about master numbers? What are master numbers, and why are they important?
Master numbers are numbers such as 11, 22, 33. There are numbers that basically have repetitive numbers, like 11, 22, 33, and 44. The reason they're important because they are emphasizing that particular energy. Like example, if you have a 22, which I'm sure this is probably why she's asking, um, you are a master builder. Why? Because the 22 is made up of two twos. 2 plus 2 is 4. And so you are a master builder. But not only are you a master builder, you're also a person that's intuitive, because you're made up of the twos. And the twos represents intuition. It represents one who's very sensitive and very impressionable and actually can feel other people's energy when they come into the room. So not only are you a master builder, but you're also very intuitive, which actually gives you insight of what you need to build. So you are a master builder. People like Sean P. Diddy Combs has a life path of a 22. If you are an 11, you're made up of 2 ones. So that 11 is, you're very sensitive, you're very intuitive, because 11 is nothing but a 2. But you're also a leader because you're made up of the ones. So it gives you keen insight to the energy of the number that you are exemplifying, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So Cheryl is asking, are there any books you recommend reading to learn more about numerology?
And there are many books out there. I don't have one particular one, but you can just take my course.
Mhm.
But I don't. There's many books out there to get the basics. You just have to be careful because there's so many different numerology books out there. You have people out there that just add the numbers and they disregard the different cycles. Cycles are very important, because if you're just adding numbers and not taking into account the cycles, then you're going to. It's almost like say you're trying to go to New York City and you need to go to a particular area in New York City. Doing numerology with not taking into account of the cycles is like going to New York, but you may end up right across the Hudson River instead of being in the Bronx or Brooklyn or something like that. In other words, you can be in the arena, but you will end up actually missing the mark that you're aiming for.
Hmm. Question: how do you feel the spiritual traditions of Africa can help us today? I mean, some people when they think about Africa, they wonder, well, how can these things help us? From your point of view, how has these traditions helped you, and how do you feel they can help others?
You're talking about Shay in general?
Right. Well, yeah, in general, well, whether it's Ifa or other African traditions, just what are your thoughts about that?
Number one, I think any spiritual system that you're sincere can help you, but for melanated people, I think it's very important because it's ancestral. And when you're tapping into uh, traditional systems or African systems, there's a stimulation there's something that is activated in your DNA that may not be activated with other systems because your ancestors per se are not stimulated by it. The truth could be there, but it's something about tradition of that awakens the ancestors, especially ancestors that came here on a boat. Say, for instance, if you had a great ancestor, they didn't know anything about Christianity. They were individuals that were traditionalists, of course, they practiced their own system. Once you start doing things that particular ancestors did, you actually bring them back. You actually awaken them inside of you. Always remember the consciousness, the memory is in the cells. The cellular memory is made up of your ancestors. As you go back in time, you go deeper and deeper into your DNA, spiritual DNA. Once you tap into those things that your ancestors did prior to colonization, prior to slavery, you start tapping into that true essence of who you really are. And so this is why I would say it's important to deal with, African traditional systems. Now, I'm not a judge of someone who doesn't practice those systems, because I'm not judging them to saying that they should practice those systems, but I'm giving you the benefits of practicing those systems. And the reason I'm saying it in that particular way, because if you're able to pierce the veil and go within yourself, it doesn't really matter which one that you practice if it's truly awakening the divine consciousness inside of you. So, but I believe traditional systems, African traditional religions are good for African people because it begins to awaken the DNA that their ancestors practiced prior to colonization and slavery.
Beautiful. Some people were asking how they could get in contact with you. So I've put Baba Shangadari's website up here. It's gonephilosophy.com. Is there also like a cell phone number where people could also reach you at?
903 241 6295. 903 241 6295.
Okay. For those that don't know, Baba Shangadari, he's one of the many experts that I quoted in my book, Meditations Across the King's River. If you still don't have that book is still available, um, either on my website, acrossthekingsriver.com, or through any of the numerous on, online retailers. But anyway, so I quoted Dr. Shangodari in the chapter of my book called The African Roots of Technology, where I talk about how the binary code in modern computer systems actually can be traced back to African divination systems, our own spiritual systems. So Shangodari, a lot of people find that don't quite understand what that means, or they find they don't quite understand how that happened historically. I was wondering if you could shed some light on that, on what that means for us and how that actually works.
Well, when people say that the divination system of Ifa is based upon a binary system, is based upon 2 raised to the 8th power which is 256. The two is based upon the polarity. And so when you when we talk about modern day computers, it, modern day computers are based upon the binary system. There are registers that are used, goes from 0 to 255, which is 256 registers, and is uses zeros and ones, which basically tell us if something is on or off. Okay, and so this particular system, and I'm talking about specifically the binary system as we know it in modern day computers, was actually it actually came about by a man by the name of Leibniz, Gottfried Leibniz. He was known as the father of calculus. He was doing his dissertation, and he used a concept that he learned from the people in Europe at the time that was practicing geomancy. Geomancy is a divination that was brought to Europe by the African Moors in the early, probably the 9th, 10th century into Spain. And it was a divination system. And Godfrey Leibniz understood how this system worked, and he decided uh, to turn this um, this system into what would become known as Boolean algebra. Not Boolean, yeah, Boolean algebra. And this particular uh, um, this particular mathematics gives us the foundation of the logic of how computers communicate with each other. And this essence is based upon this communication. This language is based upon the binary code, which the divination system of Ifa is based upon. Many people talk about, it's not about binary. It's not about binary. Well, it is about binary, but it's the interacting of the binary that gives us the birth of all things. So when we talk about Odu, you have 256 of these Odu. You have 256 of these Odu because you have the foundation of it as 16 signatures. Those 16 signatures are based upon double leg, in other words, single marking with 4 registers. In other words, like Ogbe is made up of 4 slots. But if you have Ogbe Meji or Eji Ogbe, you have 8 slots. This is the same concept in binary mathematics that we use in modern day computers to be able to communicate with each other. And so it's some people find it a stretch, but there would not be what we call modern day computers and the communication of modern day computers if there was no such thing as geomancy. And geomancy divination system is based upon 16 markings and is based upon the polarity, the duality in the interaction of those signatures. So the very foundation of the communication between modern day computers is based upon a divination system that comes out of Africa.
Thank you for that explanation. I have maybe a final question for you because I know you're such a busy man. Um, what would your advice be to people who are feeling like lost right now, hopeless, or like they're in a dark space, and they're wondering if, okay, is this life going to work out for them? Are things going to work out for them? What would you advise them? I mean, what are your perspectives on that?
Number one, I would say learn to start believing in yourself. One who lacks confidence in oneself and does not trust the process is always a tragedy. First and foremost, learn who you are. Identify the different behavior patterns that you see in your life and correct them. You need to take control of your own life. And so many times when we get down on ourselves, it's because we continue down the same road. You know, they always say if you continue to do the same thing over and over again, looking for different results, that's a sign of insanity. And so if you've been doing the same thing over and over again, maybe you need to study numerology to see why you're doing those same patterns. Study astrology. Go to somebody that can maybe help you. Don't be afraid to have conversations with people that may be able to help you see some of the things that you keep repeating in your life. Because the bottom line is this: human beings came here to have a human experience. All of our experiences won't be good, but that doesn't mean that the majority of your experiences can't be good. But the best thing I would suggest to people is learn how you tick, not to look at yourself and have pity on yourself or be down on yourself. Look at the flaws that you may have discovered about yourself, but not only your flaws, your strengths, your gifts, and if and find ways that you can help improve yourself. You did not get to this your particular situation overnight, and you're not going to get out of your condition overnight. Rome was not built in a day, and your condition, getting out of your condition, won't be solved overnight. But little by little, bit by bit, learning more who you are and what makes you tick can give you insight of what you need to do to get out of your current situation.
Thank you for that. And what about people who are struggling in the area of relationships? What I found in just with working with people for so many years myself, oftentimes people are either in a relationship that isn't working for them, or maybe they find it toxic on some level, or they're not in a relationship but are desiring to be in a relationship that they find fulfilling or meaningful. What would you say to them?
Well, relationships are very important to humanity because relationships are one of the best ways to learn more about yourself because you attract the energy that you're vibrating on. If you are lacking a relationship and you continue to feel frustrated because you're not receiving the relationship that you want, I would say look inside of yourself. How often do you meditate? What are some of the things in your childhood and your early life that you feel like created the situation as far as your behavior patterns in relationships? Many times we are not getting in the relationships that we want because God is blocking those relationships because we haven't solved the negative relationships that we have with ourselves. If one continues to not have a particular relationship, is it because you have fear in yourself and not really want to make a commitment? Some people have certain behavior patterns of attracting people who are never really available. And so when you have if you have trust issues, it seems like many times you will continue to attract people that are not available, and you keep repeating the same pattern over and over again, attracting people that may be married, attracting people that may already be in long-term relationships, and you're trying to figure out, why do I always attract people that are not available? Well, more than likely you keep attracting people that are not available because you really deep down, you don't want to make a commitment. So you have to start with yourself. Cultivate the relationship that you have with yourself. Open your heart. Find ways to open your heart. What if that's through meditation? What if that's through breath work? What if that's through affirmations? Many times people don't attract the people that they desire because they have a fear of being hurt. You would never have the love of your life if you're fearful to even begin the journey. So first and foremost, if you want a relationship with someone that loves you for who you are, you must learn to love yourself for who you are.
Beautiful. And I shared your Shangadara's website. Shangadara, could you share your phone number again? And for those who missed it the first time, I'm going to share his website again.
My number is 903-241-6295. 903-241-6295.
All right. So my final question is this, and thank you all for your questions. So many great questions today. Um, how, in your opinion, how can people get the most out of 2023? I mean, we're almost at the door of 2023 right now. How can people maximize 2023 if they're not, especially if they're not happy with how 2022 has been playing out for them?
Well, number one, as a numerologist, I would ask you to find out what your personal year number is going to be for 2023. That's number one. You already are embarking in that energy. You've already began that energy. The energy for you next year is already coming in. It started to come in for you on September the 22nd of last month. That's number one. Find out what your personal energy is. That is the energy that you will be vibrating. Also, find out what your perfected year is astrologically. If you don't know what these terms mean, contact me and I'll tell you. Find out what your perfected year is astrologically. Well, not perfected year, I'm sorry, your perfected house in astrology is for next year. Um, these are very important because then this gives you an indication what type of energy that you will be vibrating on next year. That's number one. Number two, do not be distracted by the shenanigans that you will come in contact with in 2023. I say that because 2023 is going to be a very interesting year because what's happening, if you study the natal chart of the United States of America, the natal Pluto has returned to the transit Pluto has returned to the place of the natal Pluto, which is always a lot of fireworks, and you already see that going on in this country. But what's happening in the beginning part of next year, the transit Pluto is going to come in conjunction with the natal South Node, which means the U.S. is going to have to revisit their past, and meaning that there will be uprisings, there will be conflicts, there will be all kind of stuff going on in the country that people probably would be afraid of. Do not let that distract you. Stay focused. There will be things going on in the country that probably will concern you, not just this country, but the planet. Not because there's evil people, but because it's a cycle. Because it's a cycle. Every 250 years, Pluto goes back to where it came from. Pluto right now is in Capricorn, which means that governments and higher people of authority will be challenged. It's been that way for the last 15 years because Pluto went into Capricorn January 25th, 2008. And it will continue until it takes a peep into Aquarius for about 3 months next year, and it's going to dip right back out and then go back in totally into Aquarius in 2024. So anytime Pluto goes into a sign, it's going to wreak havoc. It's going to transform what that sign and what that house represents. So this is what you need to expect next year. It's going to be a lot of Oya energy, a lot of transformation, a lot of fighting, backbiting, a lot of things that probably will make the average person afraid for their country. Don't let that be a distraction. Stick to your own energy. Be cognizant of what's going on, but don't be distracted by what's going
Thank you for sharing that wisdom with us. Also, what social media? Where can people find you on social media?
on. Instagram is Baba Aka Simone.
Okay.
Aka Simone. Aka Simone is AKASANMON. Instagram is Baba Aka Simone. Facebook, Baba Aka Simone. I'll spell it again. Baba, BABA. Aka Simone, AKASANMON. If for some reason you cannot get that spelling, just go to gonphilosophy.com and you will see the spelling because it's referring to Aka Simone Institute, which is my online classes and things of that nature.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Baba Shangodari. And thank you all for so many wonderful questions. Really enjoyed uh, bringing your questions forward, and definitely enjoyed our guest. So don't forget to connect with Baba Shangodari on social media. Also check out his website. And again, if you're not that familiar with me, you can learn more about my work at acrossthekingsriver.com. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed weekend.